Good evening, good afternoon, uh, depending on where you are. Welcome to this webinar series. For today, mainly focusing on the intricacies of platform regulation and current global trends. As you can see, there've been a number of regulation coming up after almost every other platform for one reason or the other, mainly driven by political agendas and so on and so forth. Before we get much into the details for the discussion, allow me to invite Godsway to give us some opening remarks, representing Team Agigfa, and anyone else from Agigfa who would need to give some welcome remarks, and then we can get into the discussion. Godsway, welcome to the platform.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much once again. This is Godsway Kubi speaking. And on behalf of e-Governance and Internet Governance Foundation Fund Africa, and also our partners, Institute for ICT Professionals Ghana, we humbly welcome you to today's webinar on platform regulation. As we all know, online platforms are, particularly social media, has transformed to, how we interact and also communicate, and how we access information online. However, with this transformation comes the need to navigate the complexity of how the regulatory frameworks and also how to balance innovation. So looking at the user protection and also the freedom of expression and accountability, today our panel will discuss more pressing issues and also explore the future of platform regulations and also highlight some impacts of regulation on users, developers, and particularly policymakers. So I encourage everyone to actively participate and share your thoughts as we engage in this critical conversation that affect the very foundation of our digital world. Thank you so much for making up time to join us. We look forward to having an insightful conversation today. Thank you. We invite our partner, Institute of ICT Professionals Ghana. There is a representative here who could give us some opening remarks before we proceed.
Okay, good afternoon. Please, I hope I'm audible. Good afternoon once again on behalf of the Institute of ICT Professionals Ghana and e-Governance and Internet Governance Foundation for Africa. I thank you all for making time for this webinar. Welcome you all. I'm Theresa. I represent the Institute of ICT Professionals Ghana. I'm the Data Protection and Information Security Director. And, the topic in question for this webinar is very pertinent to the status quo. We're looking at the recent development in the technology space. It's really needful to have such a conversation. Social media is a double-edged sword, and it comes with both positives and negatives, as we may have witnessed in the course of our lives with social media. I'm very active on LinkedIn and WhatsApp, and sometimes find myself on other social media platforms. But some of the content I see and hear on these platforms tell me there should be some level of moderation. And regulations are very, very important, and they are generally meant to protect consumers and users as well as customers. However, excessive regulation can be detrimental to various stakeholders within the ecosystem. In the context of our discussion, I would say reasonable regulations ought to be instituted for social media platforms, taking cognizance of human rights and concerns. And to really dissect this further, I will allow our distinguished resource persons to take over. And I encourage all of us to pay rapt attention and also contribute to that. Thank you once again for joining this webinar. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sharif. So just for those that have joined in, welcome once again to the platform regulation series. And for this one, mainly we're focusing on the different aspects of platform regulation. As you can tell or have probably seen recently, there have been a lot of trends calling for policy and laws to regulate how platforms are managed or what content moderation can be done on those particular platforms. So just as a way of giving us a heads up for the participants, we'll run a discussion with the panelists for about 30, 40 minutes, and then we'll get into a Q&A, which you'll be allowed to actually ask your questions directly, either the video or via chat still. But while the conversation is ongoing, you're allowed to make comments in the chat and also raise your questions in the chat, and then we'll see how we can address all the questions that will come up, because I'm expecting that there'll be many questions. And so just as we're also getting more people to join in, I'm not so sure which group you firstly saw this post about the webinar, but I would encourage you to just help by having to just indicate that the meeting is on or something in those lines, so that at least someone else can also get a reminder and join in. So let me do it easily. I would like to introduce the panelists by name, but also allow them to introduce themselves. And let me begin with introducing myself, because I've just realized I didn't. My name is Levy Syanseke, and I'm the moderator for this particular session, and also the founding president of the Internet Society Zambia chapter. Greetings to everyone in Ghana. It's nice actually getting back and being involved with the Ghana teams. With that said, allow me to first and foremost welcome Theresa, then we'll have Raymond, Joshua, and Zainab to introduce themselves in that order, and then we'll get right into the discussion. Theresa, you may introduce yourself.
I was really hoping that you don't mention my name considering that. Good evening, everyone. I do know that it's evening in Ghana. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone who's joining us. I have the privilege of being introduced by my president of the Zambia chapter. I am the vice president of the Zambia chapter, and professionally, I work as a cybersecurity specialist in information security. I am a digital rights and gender equity and equality activist, as well as internet public policy advocate. To my fellow panelists, thank you for being available, and the participants as well, thank you for joining us for this wonderful webinar. I do encourage you to ask your questions and also share the little knowledge that you hear, as well as learn from here. Thank you.
All right, we can have Raymond come in.
Hi, good evening from Accra, Ghana. My name is Raymond Mamattah, and I am part of the EGICFA team. I am a tech enthusiast and a bit of a background in cybersecurity, and I'm also madly in love with internet governance. I enjoy coaching and mentoring other younger ones. I'm not old, don't let my beard deceive you anyway. I enjoy mentoring other younger ones into the internet governance ecosystem, and I'm happy to be part of this discussion, which I'm really passionate about. Thank you.
All right, Joshua, then we'll have the lady last.
Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everywhere, to everyone. And my name is Joshua Ayayi. I am the team lead for Youth Alliance for Sustainability, a Ghana School on Internet Governance Fellow, as well as a youth climate and internet governance activist in Ghana. Thank you.
All right, Zainab.
So, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Zainab Salihu Usman. I'm from northern Nigeria, that is from Kano State. I'm a digital rights advocate and a community development worker. So, and I work with, I'm also a broadcaster at CITAD Online Radio. And I also work with Center for Information Technology and Development, CITAD, where I serve as a digital rights officer. And and also I work with my goals, or what I focus on is amplifying voices on issues of gender violence, digital inclusion, and youth empowerment. And I'm also a cohort 7 ambassador with Digital Grassroots. and I'm a fellow of Pan-African Youth Ambassador. So I hope the participants, we will learn in the process. We learn from you as you are learning from us. Thank you all for participating, and let's engage. Thanks.
All right, thank you to all the panelists for the introductions. On purpose, we did ladies first and ladies last, which I hope helps us have a holistic gender balance for the entire session that we'll be having. So just as a way of setting the context, let's begin. How then do we define platforms in the first place? So I'll raise one question to all the speakers and get to have a feel of how does each of the speakers define platform regulation in this particular case. So just for context, again, we are looking at platform regulation that you can talk about social media platforms, AI platforms, and the different platforms that we use for the online space, especially the ones we have seen the most that they've raised reasons why governments are calling for regulation. So as a way of beginning, how do you define platform regulation? And should platforms be regulated or not? So I'll let each of the speakers share their thoughts on this. So I'll start with Raymond, then we'll have Theresa, Joshua, and then Zainab again. Please feel free to share your thoughts on this one.
Thank you very much. And what is platform regulation? In my understanding, first, what are these platforms? So as Levy has already mentioned, basically the social media platforms that we use daily. Most of us spend about 40% of our life on these social media pages. And we can all agree that these platforms are becoming very powerful in that they are using our data to get information about us and what we do. And talking about the regulation of the platform, in my view, is about local countries or sovereign states ensuring that these platforms obey the laid down rules in their various countries at their local levels. So that is my understanding of platform regulations. So for instance, what are our rules in Ghana? We have various rules, especially that covers data protection and cybersecurity. So do this major platform, Facebook, Twitter, currently X, LinkedIn, and the rest, do they obey our laws, our local laws? On the other hand, the regulation of the platform is also coming from the other end of the platform owners. So for instance, if you are going to post on X, it has a limited number of words that can be used. So in my understanding, that is one way of regulating their platform. So I'm taking it from two angles. Then secondly, for if you are going to post something on LinkedIn, they also have their regulations. Recently, I was posting a publication and I wrote, the person must be a lady. I posted it and I checked, I can't find the post. I posted it, I can't find the post. Meanwhile, I had already shared the link. And when people click on it, they are not finding it. So I got confused if it is my data or what was going wrong. Then something just occurred to me that I should take out that wording that the person must be a lady. When I posted, it went through. So in this case, the platforms also have their regulations that we the users must also obey. So this is my two different ways of how I understand platform regulations.
All right, thank you, Raymond, for that. We may have Theresa, your tech.
All right. Thank you, Raymond, for sharing that wonderful message. So I think platform regulation can just be treated generally as any other product out there. let's say, for example, you're going in the store, you want to buy something. Of course, we do have, certain stores that post they have their own rules, standards, and regulations that you cannot buy a product on credit. And if you do buy this product, maybe there will be a penalty accustomed to that product, or maybe you go to jail. And we can just, in simple terms, treat platform regulation in this kind of way. For example, what I would like to plainly say is I do believe that platforms should be regulated. And also, it's very, very important to actually define on whose end they should be regulated, on the consumer's end, or on the the makers of the platform's end, and who the platform is actually benefiting. When we are defining platform regulations, we're defining it as a set of rules, policies and standards, that govern the way the platform are supposed to be run, the way the platforms respect consumers' rights, the way the platforms respect the people that made them, the way the platforms are managing people's data, the way the platforms are being run, daily. And when you look at how a country or a nation is being run, we have different rules and different laws, different policies that tend to govern how the humans around their human rights, their digital rights, and that's the way platforms are also regulated, and also how you can define platform regulations in terms of who it's benefiting at the current state, or who it will be benefiting in the future state. So regulating platforms creates that correlation and cooperation and on how someone can be held accountable. I did like the way Raymond gave an example of you post something and the next day you actually don't find it. The platform maker can tell you that what you posted was wrong, and maybe you think that what you posted is right. So when you look at both ends and the balance, if the platform is regulated and there are certain standards put in place, it's able to benefit various stakeholders and also consumers as the platform is being run on the daily basis. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let me have Joshua, then Zainab, to give their thoughts on this one. Then I'll have Joshua and Zainab back to answer the next question. Joshua, should platforms be regulated, and how do you define platform regulation on your end?
Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity. One of the things I think has been done justice to is the fact that we have explained what platform regulation is. Regulation basically is to make sure that there are laws governing anything that we do, right? For example, in Ghana, government has designated MTN as a company that has the largest market share in Ghana. That's about 70%, right? And because government has designated it outside, there are certain protocols that such a company must take, right? So once you corner that market share, that large market share first, your pricing always has to be on top of the others. You have to have the most expensive prices, right? And then there are certain privileges that are afforded other players in that same market that you can't. And it is done so that the market stays competitive, because immediately you corner 70%, you are hinching towards monopoly. And it is in the country's interest that the market stays competitive, so that there will be new entrants, there will be innovation, right? And there will be excellence in service delivery. So regulation at all times is meant for the benefit of, one, the players themselves, two, the customers or the consumers of the product which the players are bringing on board, and then for the benefit of the regulators themselves. So these are the three key things. And so online platform regulation is basically protecting, one, the social media companies or the .com companies, if you will. Two, it is protecting the consumers, that you and I who use these products on a daily basis. And three, it is also protecting the interest of the government or the regulating bodies in which jurisdiction these companies are playing in. And so these are the objectives, and definitely, yes, there should be regulation. Otherwise, all you're going to have is chaos and anarchy.
Interesting response. Zainab, so I'd like to get your thoughts on platform regulation, and also I think getting into the second question which Joshua was just answering to, if we're to regulate platforms, what should be the objectives of such regulations, really?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Even though already my colleagues have already said a lot about the platform regulation, but I will say a little about it. To my own understanding, platform regulation, which refers to a rules governing how online platforms operate. That is, it covers areas like content moderation, data privacy, competition, and it ensures platforms manage harmful content, protect user data, and promote transparency, and even prevent monopolistic practices. So based on this definition, so there are a lot of debate about whether platforms should be regulated or not. So in favor of regulation, protecting users from harmful content, that is hate speech, disinformation, and others, and also ensuring data privacy and prevent misuse. That is, and also holding platforms accountable for amplifying harmful content and encouraging fair competition and prevent monopolies. And also to enhance user safety and promote responsible platform behavior. That is for those that think that platform should be regulated. That is, it's mostly user friendly. That is how the users can be protected, having content moderation and others. And those that are against the regulation, that is the risk of stifling free speech and expression. And also it might hinder innovation and growth, particularly for smaller platforms. So if platforms are regulating, it will hinder innovation. That is, it will hinder innovation and growth of small platforms. That is, the smaller platforms that are growing. And also potential government overreach and censorship. Some believe platforms can self-regulate through their guidelines. So in conclusion of this platform regulation, I think platforms should be regulated to protect users and ensure accountability. But the regulation must be strict, a balance to avoid stifling and innovation or restricting freedoms. Let me move to the question whether, okay, let me move to the other question. What should be the objectives or goals of such regulations? The objectives or goals of regulating online platforms should focus on the following. I think number one, that is protect user privacy. That is safeguarding users' personal data and ensuring platforms comply with privacy law, like GDPR, and to prevent misuse or unauthorized sharing of information. Among the objectives, it also includes how to promote. It includes promoting transparency. That is, platforms should be transparent about their algorithm, content moderation policies, and data practices, allowing users to understand how information is used and how content is filtered. And also to ensure accountability. Regulation should hold platforms accountable for harmful or illegal content, such as hate speech, misinformation, or harassment, while ensuring due process in content removal and enforcement action. And again, among the objectives include the safeguarding freedom of speech. While regulating harmful content, the regulation should also protect users' freedom of expression and prevent censorship, ensuring a balance between the safety and the free speech. Likewise, additionally, combating misinformation. Platforms should be required to actively combat disinformation and fake news, especially during critical periods such as elections, pandemics, and other public interest movements. Also, promote fair competition, ensuring that large platforms don't unfairly dominate the market, supporting innovation and competition to avoid monopolistic practices. So, again, protect vulnerable groups. That is specific measures to protect the children's, minorities, women's, and other vulnerable groups from harassment, bullying, or exploitation. So each of these goals ensure a safer, fair, and more accountable digital ecosystem. And a regulation should aim at strengthening the platform defenses against cyber attacks, data breaches, and other security risks that could harm users. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, great. Thank you, Zainab. Now, this has raised a lot of thoughts for me. I'm looking at the recent Meta, TikTok, partly Twitter, Apple, and Spotify being called before the US Senate to answer to some of these things. From what Zainab is saying, it gets me thinking, is it an issue of platform regulation, or there's an issue of having countries, or we found ourselves in the middle of the West versus certain countries? That's why there's a bit of a call on regulation. An example is how, for example, the call on TikTok to say TikTok does moderation of its content. What you see in Africa versus what they see in China versus what they see in the US. That's a whole different kind of content. When I hear Joshua and Zainab talk about the rules that should apply, then Raymond highlights to say they should have their own policies to regulate themselves in a sense. It raises questions of when we see this whole thing, what does it mean for Africa? What does it mean for innovatives? But much more, the question I have for Raymond and I think Theresa right now is, what does global regulation of platforms look like? I know this is an interesting question because Raymond on one end feels platforms shouldn't be regulated and Theresa feels platforms should be regulated. But please feel free to help us understand on this part, what does global regulation of platforms look like? Also bearing in mind the recent cases where TikTok, Twitter, and maybe even the Telegram case comes in around regulation. What's your take?
Okay, thank you. First of all, when we are talking about platform regulation, let's face the facts. We are talking about the big economics determining what this platform how they should regulate their platforms. Two, the big economies are finding or taking on the platform owners. Basically, this is what platform regulation, the practice of platform regulation is. The definition is out there, but what is the practice? So let's face it. What is the practice? The practice is, let's take Elon Musk on, let's take this one on, let's take this one on. So that is the first understanding of platform regulation from my point of view. And the issue of local rules applying on these platform regulations. One, if we say Facebook should implement some of the restrictions from Ghana, and they say they won't do it, what can we do as Ghanaians? Do we have that economic power to insist that they should do it? And if they say we are kicking out of Ghana, who will cry? We the users are those who will be crying. That is why US, the big economic entities are able to speak and they make impact. But in our part of the world, if we come as individual countries, are we going to be able to make any impact? I doubt. Then secondly, talking about the practicality of regulating these platforms, let's also look at it from how I see it. We have 193 countries in this world that are UN members. So I'm using the UN member countries, states. Imagine Facebook. All these 193 countries are insisting that obey my rule. At what point will Facebook now be able to settle or satisfy all of these countries? At what point? So in Ghana, we are now about 30 million, and majority of Ghanaians are youth. So let's say 10 million of Ghanaians are using Facebook. Imagine we tax Facebook to moderate or to see what we post, and they'll be able to moderate it. If it is wrong or it is bad, then they'll be able to either remove it. Ghana alone, we are 10 million Facebook users. How would they be able to do all these moderations to be able to check the wrong publications that have to be taken care of? Talking about even the 193 countries in the whole world, I think we are asking too much as what the platform advocates are advocating for. The practicality, I doubt if the practicality is there. The workability, I doubt if it can really be implemented. So let's face it, the economic giants are the ones that they will listen to. And likely will our local rules and regulations, as for instance, as I mentioned in Ghana, I doubt if we can really make any much impact. So in my view, the local impacts the laws are there to be used against this platform, but I don't believe that we have the economic powers to bite. So the laws are there, but we are not able to have it implemented. That's my thought.
All right, that's an interesting response. Let me get quickly, just in brief, maybe Zainab, would you like to share your thoughts on this? Highlighted the issues surrounding what's at stake when we get into the whole aspect of regulation of these platforms. Africa at most might lose because we are talking about economies here at war and like actually the battle being about platforms. Before I get Theresa back on what does global regulation look like, Zainab, what are your thoughts on what is at stake really if we go for platform regulation from the African perspective, if we're talking about Africa also joining the wagon of regulating platforms?
Well, I can take it if she's not ready.
Okay, please, Joshua.
Yeah, sure. And I agree with Raymond to an extent. It's very, very true that to be able to lay a claim in this entire world and in this entire thing called geopolitics, you need to be economically viable, right? And so it is true. Before they hit to Ghana, for example, Ghana would have to have that claim to make, for example, to be able to make Meta, for example, tons of money, right? To the extent that when they pull out of Ghana, it's going to hurt them. That is the only way they can listen to us. And that is not going to happen anytime soon. But then that's why we have regional blocks, right? And it is also very good that we now have the free trade area. Point is this, it should be regulated. No two ways about that, right? Because up until a certain time, we didn't know what Facebook and all of these things, all of these platforms were doing with our data. We didn't even know that they were spying on us, so to speak, right? Taking our data and using for other activities. And sometimes it's something, right? It is free. Yes, it's true. We understand that we are accessing the service for free, but just tell us, okay, for the free service, this is what I'm going to use your data for, X, Y, and Z. If I agree, I subscribe. If not, I look for another thing else, right? Just tell us. And then give me the option that even in the future, right, after using your services and I feel like I don't want to use your service, your free service again, I also have the right to tell you that, okay, you've also used my data to make a lot of money up to this point. Now that I am terminating my contract with you, also, you do not have the right to further use my data. You get it? We should be able to have. And the only way we can be able to do that is through regional blocks. Now, Africa, our GDP, what is around $1.2 trillion, right? So as a regional block, we can come together and say, Facebook, this is what every African nation wants you to do, right? With our data. And before you do that, before you use our data, satisfy this 5 or 6 or 10 conditions. Look at Europe, for example. If you take the countries apart, most of the countries are quite small, right? Most of the countries that actually lead the Human Development Index in Europe are actually countries with very small GDP. Do you understand? It's just that they have been able to progress to the extent that whilst not, you can't find everybody ultra rich, but you can't find anyone also poor. So you'd have Finland and Switzerland and all of these countries. They form a block to the extent that platforms, right, are actually
It's just on my end. I can't seem to hear Joshua, but I can see him. Okay, he's also been disconnected. While trying to get hold of Joshua, Theresa, just maybe to bring you back in, and then I'll get Raymond on. I'll allow Joshua to finish his story when he's back. But just while waiting on him, Facebook has been cited often for breach of data privacy, right? Data privacy, misuse of personal data. A good example is the Cambridge Analytica case in the elections, the US elections. If we are talking about platform regulation, how can we ensure that user data is protected on platforms, especially in light of the increasing use of personal data for targeted advertising and other purposes? Would you like to share your thoughts on that, Theresa?
I would have loved to hear Joshua's closing remarks, and also so I think many other times the issue with Facebook and data privacy, I think it's been going on some time back. For those that would have been following what was going on, Mark Zuckerberg was called to trial, things like that. And I think when you when you were introducing Raymond, you mentioned something very, very keen. I feel most people don't know about that. We don't all see the same thing when we're using these platforms. So the way generally Africa would see TikTok as an application is different from the way US or China would see TikTok, or they would see WhatsApp or even Facebook. In terms of regulation, I don't know if it's done, in country, there's a way they talk to the makers of WhatsApp, because in Zimbabwe, you have to buy WhatsApp data separately. I don't know if in other countries as well, if it's done the same way, or maybe it's just in Zim. I'm not really sure about that. But when it comes to explicit, data protection and also data rights. Individually, I know this is going on in country in Zambia. We are trying to tighten our data privacy and our data protection laws. I think most of the workshops I've attended this year are all in relation to data privacy and data protection. And I feel like people are now, being, awakened on, their data being very, very vital and being very, very valuable. Way back, we didn't even know that these people are even stealing our data. You would put in your age, your what, people are using, cookies. The fact that we don't read all the terms and conditions, we just click yes. Because one thing I've also observed is that you cannot proceed to use a certain application or proceed to use a certain platform before agreeing to the terms and conditions, which are very, there are a lot. Can be like a page full, not well highlighted, no important, objectives or goals highlighted, or things that are really important to you, so that you can say, okay, this was highlighted. It's a lot of gibberish. You get to agree to it, and then you move forward. Certain cookies that are there on your computer, on your PC, on your phone, that are targeted to what you're thinking, what you would like to buy, the conversation that you're having on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and they are being collected, so that your data can be sold to these companies so that they can make money out of it. We are seeing different countries on also Kenya. They are very stiff when it comes to your data protection in your data laws, and anything relating to your data. People are coming on saying, okay, my data is valuable, and it shouldn't be used in this way. It should be used in this way as well. And using that data to either manipulate elections, or manipulate selling a product, or manipulate someone to get a certain vote in any way. Yeah, like you mentioned, in the US, it was actually mentioned some time back, and now that we're even having elections again, it's being brought up. In Africa, of course, I don't think we've reached at that level where we can even do like election online, or maybe a lot of digital campaign. We're still in the old times where politicians have to physically campaign. But we would also see this in a way that, okay, maybe voters are manipulated in some way, or maybe their data is still used in one way or another. Just to add on to what Raymond had mentioned earlier, he feels in his words that we might be requesting for too much, that some of these platforms different challenges, and also come up with different solutions that might help African countries to progress. And I would also highlight that the Europe, they have the GDPR, and also French, they came up with a policy in relation to misinformation and also disinformation. These are laws that regulate their small countries, or even laws that can also be subjected to us, even Africans, because the GDPR, we do follow it. We might not know about it very much, but we do follow it. This is a policy that is steep, and it's a standard for us to follow this policy, and this thing that has been regulated. So why can't Africans come up with something like that? We don't want something stiff, that every country should have something different that is protecting them. Well, I'm just mentioning about data protection and data privacy. We are seeing it being treated as an individual thing in country. Of course, in country we can have certain policies, because we come from different countries. We come from we follow different traditions. But what's so much difficult to have a certain standard in relation to data privacy, to data laws, a certain standard and policy that can govern African countries in general. And then from there, we can take it in country, something that can help us, speak one voice, because already from what is being seen and what is being heard, we're all speaking different voices in relation to what our country might be comfortable with. And I think that's why mostly the confusion is. If Europe and America has managed to create this standard, why can't we? I think I'll end there.
Thank you, Theresa. That's quite an interesting one. I'd like to reserve my comments on this aspect, I think, towards the end. But it'll be interesting to see how an African GDPR, if you like, would look like. But much more, I think the biggest issue Africa should have to address around this, I don't know if this is a diversion, but we need to address our internet connectivity source. 3/4 of our connection is actually being supplied by the big techs. And talking about regulation, we have to build the other backside of it before we, I think, build on that. But anyway, I'll leave that for a thought for everyone else in the meeting and the panelists. Let me move to, let me get back to Joshua. I would like you to finish your thoughts because I think you cut before you finish your thoughts. But in addition to it, the question I have for you is, how do we hold the platform owners? Because we've noticed that a number of them are becoming a monopoly. A good example, give or take, Facebook. It's buying off anything that would feed into, in essence, anything that looks like those that have resisted. So the question I have is, how do we hold them accountable for harmful content, for misinformation, and other negative impacts? How do we hold these platforms accountable? So I'll hand that question to Joshua, and then you can also finish your thought. And then I'll have Theresa and everyone else back with a few other questions. Joshua, your thoughts?
Well, thank you. I mean, that was ultimately what I was going to say. I like how the last speaker ended. If America and Europe could do it, and underscoring the word Europe. And sorry, I can't put my video on because of how unstable the network is, right? If America and Europe can do it, why can't Africa do it? So the watchword over here is Europe, right? We have the African bloc. Let's come together and do something. Let's all feed into it. And then with that, we can begin to create the leverage that we all need to get that listening ear. In terms of holding platform regulators accountable, or letting them ensure that they protect our data, is, limiting data collection, right? So only the necessary information. Do you get it? We get them to just take only the necessary information they need. But right now, like you said, Facebook has become a big conglomerate, right? And the whole world stood by as Facebook just swallowed all the major, right? All the major social media. They wanted to annex Twitter, right? Twitter had to stand firm at the time. They wanted to annex Snapchat. They also had to fight at the time, right? And so Facebook has become this big, should I say, monster, right? That is harvesting data left, right, center. And there was a time when there was this panic, right? And everybody thought we're all going to leave WhatsApp because WhatsApp had updated its privacy policy, and I put out a notification that they were going to combine, right, your data from all their platforms to get very good services for you. So you realize that you say something on WhatsApp, maybe you're looking for shoes, a certain kind of shoes, and you get on Facebook, and then adverts of shoes begin to pop up, right? You are looking for something on Instagram, you get on Facebook, and those things begin to pop up. So that's how they are combining that data to get you that customized, service. That service that you were like, oh, I just said this 2 minutes ago that I wanted X, and right now I'm getting an advert for X. Wow. Do you get it? But in order for them to be able to give you that wow service, they have to take your data from different sources, right? They are listening, they are watching, and they are monitoring whatever you type, say, or do, or watch, right? And so that also has to be looked at. If you want, and this is where education comes in. If you want the wow service, then you would have to understand that they have to make use of all this data. If you do not want them to make use of that data, then you also need to understand that you are not going to get the wow service, the click of a button service that we all love, right? So this is a two-way approach. that we need to go about. And also, like the last speaker said, the consent. They pack that side with a lot of gibberish, right? So you don't even get to where the real issues are. And they write it very, very small, just like they do on the Visa card, right? On basically every product that has been produced in this world, right? They write all those places very, very small, very, very small. And then all you just do is sign, yeah, I agree, I agree, I agree, I agree. Not knowing you are signing away your entire digital life, right? And so this is what I think should be done. Like she said, highlight the key points for people to be able to see and then make the informed decisions. At the end of the day, it comes back to help you as a platform, right? And also having data protection officers. I mean, I think Facebook has regulators on board that are regulating. Some time ago, there was this stretch of a strike. I don't know if it was a strike, that most of them were having mental health issues because of the videos and the statements and the things they had to sift through, right? Some of them are just not right for human consumption, and they have to sift through all of these things hours and hours and hours to make sure that what comes out is good for human consumption. I think they are doing the best. I think we can also help them, right? We can help them by educating the masses and get the masses to understand that this is what you are in for. If you want this kind of top-notch service, this is what you are giving away for free. If you don't want to give it away for free, then you also need to understand that you are not going to get that kind of top-notch service. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
That's quite interesting. Let me get Zainab on this one. How else do we hold these platform owners or platforms accountable? Because you can agree, of course, mostly it's around content moderation, but we can also confirm that some of these platforms have been used because of some of the loopholes people have seen to promote misinformation or to create negative impacts. So how then do we have this aspect really managed? If we're to hold them accountable, how do we do it? Zainab.
Okay, I think to hold these platforms accountable for the content, as you talk of misinformation, fake news, and others, I think first of all we need to have some, let me say, like some policies or some people, like some initiatives or some organizations maybe that we will be working on, that to be holding those kind of platform accountable for what they have been doing, because this is not a governmental work. Maybe it needs works from different perspective of people, so that we can hold these people accountable of our data, especially our personal data. They used to, you will see that they collected a lot of data from while you are registering or while you are using their platforms. They collect your name, your picture, all other things, and you come and be posting your things. Sometimes you post from your heart, that what is you post what you are feeling or something related to that, and the data is with them, and you cannot hold them accountable for your data. We don't know how we can hold these people accountable for our data. So I think we need to have some that is the regulations we are taking. We need to have some regulations that will make the platforms accountable for our content and data. I think that is what I could say.
All right, thank you, Zainab. So I've seen some questions in the chat and they're very interesting, but just a highlight and a note. I've learned of 2 new social media platforms I didn't know about till today. I don't know how to pronounce it, but the first one is Nostr and Mastodon. This will be interesting to see how these platforms, I think this attributes to the statement made earlier, that these platforms are becoming a monopoly, that others as seemingly non-existent, yet they exist. But well, that's something I'm learning. Joshua, yeah, okay, under 30 seconds before I get to the next question. But
Sure.
for
I mean,
for the platform.
I think, yes, I think open source are good things. There's something great that we need to pursue. It opens the way for innovation, opens the way for competition. However, in terms of data protection, the data sits somewhere. So even with an open source, right, the data is going somewhere. So the question is, who controls that data? Who regulates that data? How is that data used? And I think one of the things that can help anything, whether it is closed or open source, is the opt-in content, right? Where you require users to opt in for the kind of services they need. And that determines what their data are used for. And also, I mean, at the end of the year, just like you do for your financial statements and your technical statements, put it out there. This is how we used X, Y, and Z data that we got from Africa. And these were the services we were able to provide. At the end of the day, we saw a lot of Africans were looking for X, Y, and Z. Put it out there. Let people see what you are doing. Because blackness or emptiness or darkness always brings doubts and in people's minds.
All right, great, thanks. So I noticed Raymond would like to make a comment based on what we've discussed, but before he does that, let me ask this question to him so that he can answer two things at once. And Joshua or Theresa, you're free to respond on this one as well. One of the things that still stands out now is, I think in the response, Raymond highlighted this. If we are holding platforms accountable, a question really arising is, are the platform owners responsible for the content and the conversations by its users? The good example is the case of Telegram CEO, where he is arrested on allegations that their platform is used for criminal communication and the platform owners have allowed it through encryption, when in the actual sense, all they're promoting is privacy. And so their encryption is super strong that government, in terms of trying to do surveillance using those platforms, hasn't been able to manage to access the conversation and the communication going on. So the question then is, are the owners really responsible for what people share on those particular platforms when we talk about regulation? So allow Raymond to respond to that one. Of course, give your comment based on what has been pending. And then Theresa, and then I'll have Joshua and Zainab before I ask my last question to the panelists. Raymond, over to you.
Thank you. So the platform owners responsible for what the users posts. I have an analogy to share. So for instance, let's imagine you are a landlord and you have several tenants that are in your house. One is noted for always bringing in different girls to the house at different times, and you can see it. The other one also makes noise when people are sleeping. And here is the case: the police has come to arrest the landlord, leaving the perpetrators of the crime. Does it make sense?
No.
It doesn't. So why should the platform owners be held accountable for what the users do? Why don't you go for the perpetrators of the crime? Go for those who commit the crimes. It is my platform, but I cannot control what they post. And we are the same people. If they should start deleting what we post, we'll start screaming that they are violating our freedom of speech. So in short, for me to be able to get time to respond briefly to the other previous questions, in short, with my analogy that I've given, I don't believe the platform owner should be taken and held accountable for what the users post. And coming to the Facebook issue, The question here is, do they force you to put your data out on the platform? Today, you wake up, you've gone for an event, and you've loaded 100 pictures on Facebook. Do they force you to put it there? No. Do they force you to put your date of birth? No. Do they force you to put the correct date of birth? No. Do they force you to put your telephone number there? No. Do they force you to put where you have visited there? No. So why complaining about what you are not forced to do? And when it is being used, now you are complaining. It doesn't add up. So the onus bestows on us as users to be sensitive on what data we put out there, knowing very well that such data will be exploited and be used as and when it is necessary. So to conclude with this very one, there's a Ghanaian adage that says that when you speak for the hawk, speak for the hen as well. Thank you.
All right, you raised some dust and the truth that you've spoken really hurts on a number of parts, but I do want to applaud you for that one. Theresa, your thoughts on what I've raised or based on what Raymond has shared. So you can keep this in like a minute before we respond to the last question with everyone else.
All right. I wish this was physical. I mean, I remember those debates in high school, huh? They would get so intense. I think Raymond has pierced my heart a little bit when he mentioned that these platforms, they don't force us to, put, our personal information in them. But previously when I was sharing, I did mention that they give you a certain choice where you won't proceed to use this platform unless you click that terms and conditions. Unless, at some point you will use your Google, your email to access a certain platform, but there will be something that you will not be able to access till you put in your date of birth, those, other details. And this is the way it is with most platforms you are going to download today on, on Apple Store or, on Android Store or any other store that they have created, since I'm learning about new platforms as well. So it's not really about you willingly on a certain extent, because when you bring WhatsApp, it's brought as a communication platform. That's the first thing. And everyone wants to communicate to their loved ones in different places. When you see Facebook, when it came, it was very, very big. It's a new platform that is used, for communication, this and that. Definitely, I'm going to use the platform. But if you are given reasons that they're not forcing us in some way to input this, this information. So to some extent, we are accountable. Then I don't think we are approaching this thing in the right way, because at the end of the day, this thing was created for communication. But even them, the creators, they say, no, we want to make money. So you won't be able to proceed. You won't make that video call unless you put in your name. And I've seen most platforms. There's a cab platform here in Zambia. We use Yango frequently. I put in my name, my phone number, and frequently it would ask me of my exact, location, or try to ping, my home, since, frequently I would, transport from work home. It's, insistently trying to, make me put this, certain location as, my exact location, or maybe my home location. That's how they get you. And frequently it has been instantly, more like prompting me to add, my profile pic, my picture, all these things. It doesn't really, deregulate me from using certain things, but it's more like hinting that I need to do this for me to, get, these other values as well. When you look at most of these platforms, of course, no one will force us, but you even see, like, especially when it comes to certain, documentation platforms, of course, communication platforms, I won't really face that backlash, but then I want to sign a document digitally. I think there is Sign Easy that I used to use way before. Of course, the first time you use it for free, but proceeding to use those other slots for free, I had to sign up or sign in and put in my information, date of birth, and all that. And that information is very important. Just me slotting in that I'm from Zambia, I'm part of the statistic. I'm part of, the segmentation that they are trying to do. I'm part of the marketing. So bringing that argument that we're not really being forced to put in this information. We are not forced, yes, but then we're given no choice. Do you want to use Facebook or not? And then, you say you want to use Facebook because, someone posted that video that you want to see. So mostly we're given that you are enticed. Like, if you can't proceed to tick this off, you won't use it. And I've seen most applications and most platforms, do that. And I think, that, fits perfectly into the conversation that we're having right now. I'll give opportunities for others to share.
All right, thank you, Theresa. So let me just get Zainab, and then I'll ask the last question to everyone else. Zainab, your thoughts on whether or not we should still have platform owners really be responsible for the content and for everything going on the platform. Should they be responsible?
Okay, so I think it's left for the users because I don't think the platform owners should be responsible for that. To my on my own understanding, I can see that whenever you are posting something, make sure that you post something that is not sensitive, maybe something that will not put you into trouble, and make sure you post something that it will not be harmful to someone else, and even the composition. But sometimes we used to have a personal conversation, maybe within family or like within married people, like husband and wife. Maybe the wife is in this, maybe in Nigeria, while the husband is maybe, let's say, in Ghana or any other country. There is kind of conversation they will be having that is you see that one will be a personal conversation. So if there is I think data privacy, like for the for if there is what they called encryption. So they said that when we have, I think, meeting with Meta, they said that encryption, when you are sending a message to your maybe spouse or children or something, when you are sending message to someone else, that encryption helps that nobody will see what you are trying to send to someone. So you see that they are trying to regulate how the conversations or messages you are sending to be, they are trying to regulate how those messages that are going out are protected. So that is what I think. I think that both the user and even the platforms, they should provide some ways that they will protect the conversation of their users, and even the users, they should know what they used to pass through. Maybe they used to send as a message. Thank you.
All right, great. So before we conclude, we have about a few minutes for participants to ask questions. So far I've noted, I think there are mainly 3 highlight questions, 2 from Lavish and 1 from Shadrach. Well, I don't know whether you'd like to ask your questions on open mic or we still read them in the chat. Please do indicate while the panelists answering the last questions. The last question for me, it's very interesting to see the questions and the conversations in the chat. I love them. Thank you to every participant, especially those that are actively chatting and texting in the chat. My last question, this one I'm bringing it back to other panelists unlike earlier planned. But please do me a favor, answer that question under a minute for each one of you. With an increase in innovation, which we've seen the different platforms coming up, Some are best in security, privacy. Signal is a good example on privacy and security in terms of encryption. Of course, Telegram is one of those that also has good encryption, but there are several others, which probably in Africa, we may not know the European end, because I know China has a number that are only used in China. Korea has also some that are only used in Korea, and they're really good. With this increase in innovation, what are some emerging trends in platform regulation that we should be watching out for? For instance, regulation of artificial intelligence or the deepfakes. Should we then still look at a regulation to some extent for all the platforms that are coming up, or we should still leave it open to the users and governments, whether there's encryption involved or not? I'll open this question to all the panelists. So let me start with Zainab. I'll do the ladies first this time around. Zainab, Theresa, then I'll have Joshua and Raymond as a closing one. Your thoughts?
Oh, okay. I think the question you are asking about what kind of emerging trends that we'll be watching in this related to artificial intelligence or deepfakes. When it comes to AI, I think AI ethics and accountability will help as will play a larger role in decision making. And this may include ensuring transparency, fairness, and accountability, particularly when algorithm can result in biased outcomes or affect significant areas like hiring, law enforcement, and healthcare. About deep regulation, I think deepfake regulation. Deepfakes manipulate media where someone likeness is used in false context. So we have there have been raised concern over misinformation, privacy violation, and election interference. So some governments are moving to regulate the certain or dissemination of deepfakes by imposing penalties for harmful uses, and especially in areas like politics and pornography. While AI content moderation recommend and becoming prevalent or on platforms like Facebook and YouTube. Regulators are increasingly looking at how this system impacts free speech, misinformation, and the spread of harmful content. The challenges lies in balance. The challenges, I think it lies in balancing the need to remove harmful content with preserving user rights. So that is what I will say.
All right, thanks. Theresa, your thoughts?
Unfortunate that we are ending this conversation. Raymond, I think we need to continue in the coming weeks. We need to continue this conversation, but it's very important. I think something that's been mentioned prominently is the advancement of technology. Of course, these platforms, applications, they are evolving as humans also evolve, and we are seeing a lot of there's a lot going on in a very short period of time. I think last year we didn't hear much about ChatGPT, but this year we're hearing a lot, and it's being embedded. It's on WhatsApp, it's on Facebook. It's almost on every platform out there. We are seeing we're seeing botnets, we're seeing a lot of attacks happening in the tech space, and we're seeing less of policies and standards being put in place that can ensure that these attacks are happening less and less. Of course, we can say platforms can be regulated, and Raymond will say no, platforms shouldn't be regulated. It has to be a balance. Something that also wasn't mentioned prominently that we can pick up is how one might create a platform that people can be able to have private conversation, and then the next day, that person may be judged saying, yeah, this platform that you've created, of course it has data privacy. People can be protected, but then also there's something that someone might be hiding or not. And it's very important as we are having AI and blockchain technology coming into space, that these conversations are made aware, they are made public. There's a lot of communication between the regulators and also the consumers and also the stakeholders that are involved in these platforms. It's very important, as I mentioned, that there should be transparency in how they might be regulated, on how they are allowed to the consumers, how they are allowed to the nation, and also to the public, as well as even if standards are being made now in the near future. I think there should be collective effort from both parties, that at the end of the day, there is a balance and not one person is benefiting. I think, thank you. That's all from my end.
All right. Thank you so much. Joshua.
Yes. I mean, quick one. I think platform regulators or platform owners should be held accountable, and it is all in the hopes that they build better technology. For example, we didn't know AI was in the works until OpenAI came into the scene, right? Generative AI. We knew something like that was about to pop up, but Sam Altman basically revolutionized, right? And look at what he did, because he decided to do his open source. He basically created rapid innovation. And today, because of that, all the giants, right, are racing each other in creating innovative products using generative AI. Do you understand? So, of course, you need to hold them responsible, because it's a platform. For example, I think Donald Trump's time, right, when he was president of the US, Twitter did something then where they used to take off some of his tweets. And then he said, well, since you have taken up the role of a media house, then I'm also going to slap you with the taxes that I slap the media houses, right? Because media houses, you can't go on TV and then just say something you can't verify. The host will ask you to retract. Do you understand? And so once you're beginning to play that role on online, even though you are a platform, you are a different platform, then we'll need to treat you as a media house. Do you understand? And if you are saying, on the other hand, that there should be no regulation at all, then Mr. Raymond, don't be angry when someone also uses your picture on a deep fake, because Facebook will not flag it. It's as simple as that. So someone will go and use your picture on a deep fake, go and steal billions on the Federal Reserve, and then will come and catch you at home. You understand? So there needs to be some level of regulation. We just need to meet each other halfway. And I think that sums up everything. Let's meet each other halfway, and let's all take collective responsibility and accountability.
All right. Ray, your comment on the questions I've asked.
Thank you. And to Joshua, a fellow Votarian, let me just chip in this. If anybody takes my picture for a deepfake, we'll take the person to Nugoko. So that one is not an issue. Okay. And to build up on Joshua's point of rapid innovations, I think we have not even seen even 1% of the emerging innovations yet. It's now seriously coming up. So we should better be prepared for them and see how best we can have it to work for us. We used to have a song that says that fire is a good master, but a bad servant too. The same way some of these emerging technologies have the bad aspect and the good aspect. So we should exploit both aspects and ensuring that there is a middle line between them. And one of the interesting things that I think we ought to do is education. So for instance, if you see somebody's picture flying around, you should be able to tell that that might not really be the person's picture. It is not really the person who has used that picture. It's not that real person who has posted that item out there. Like, we have to get that clear so that you don't go and attack the person before realizing that you have made a mistake. Secondly, the deepfakes, especially the videos. By the time we finish this presentation, somebody has just taken my video and has also doctored my voice and is able to go out there and say that I've insulted the president of Ghana. Imagine the mess I'll be in. By the time I have finished defending myself that that is not me, that is me though, but that's not my voice, it will have been too late. I've been slapped with fines and even some personal abuses. So we really need education for everybody to understand that deepfakes are there. There are bad actors that will use this media out there, multimedia out there for their personal gains. Then to address this, I believe it is important that we need to get a multi-stakeholder platform where the users should be part of it, the government, the platform owners, the platform users, and the business entities. Bear in mind, it is the business entities that make use of this data that the platform owners have. If I want to advertise my product, I go to this business, the platform owners, and tell them that I am interested in selling this product. Through the various algorithms, the platform owners will be able to trace who is interested in shoe, who is interested in what. So a lot of people have interest in what these platform owners do with the data available. So my suggestion is to have a platform, a forum, which is multi-stakeholder, to bring on board all the interested parties to share their views and in what best ways that this platform can best be used. So that's my thinking on how to address these emerging technologies.
All right, great. Thank you, Raymond. Before I call you back each for 30 seconds response, let me pick 3 questions. So far in the chat, I have, I think, mainly 2. One from Lavish and one from Shadrach. Shadrach, help me confirm if you'd like to ask the question directly so that I don't read it. Lavish mentioned that I can ask, so I'll pick one from 2 of his questions because I think one was a bit more mouthful and I think I wanted to get it responded to. Partly it was 100 in the chat, so I'll leave the one that was, I think, answered in the chat because I think there was a bit of back and forth in the chat in terms of who should really be at the forefront of regulation. There was government stakeholders. For me, it comes back to the general internet governance forum approach where you have it's multi-stakeholder approach. That's how you should go. But let me pick the other question that you had asked. Is it not in the right context to associate these platform owners to their respective countries of origin? Do they not, to some extent, have the backing or grounds from the country? Do their actions not add to the power these nations yield? To a large extent, does it not end with geopolitics? So for that question, let me pick Zainab and Joshua. And then for the second question from Shadrach, I'll get Raymond and I think Theresa. But for now, let me have Zainab and Joshua. Would you be able to respond to that part? Please be brief.
Yeah. I mean, the geopolitics part, yes, it definitely contributes to the power. I mean, the American GDP right now is is also inclusive of how much Facebook or Meta, Snapchat, and all of this Western or American or country-focused platforms are doing. And so definitely, yes, it contributes to their power. And but you see, like I say, it's also about the show of force. Do you get it? So, for example, one of the things that came out, or the fallout from what happened to the inquiries, what led to the inquiries of when the Zuckerberg was brought to the forefront of Congress, was that one congresswoman said they had sat down and watched as Facebook has quietly annexed all of these things. And then one day they just woke up and realized that Facebook was big, right? Controlling the entire landscape of social media, and was able to do whatever they wanted, right? And of course, this led to some accusations, even in terms of meddling with US elections. So in as much as it is benefiting the US, there are times when it will come back to bite the regulators. And once it begins to bite them, that's when the regulators also bite back hard. Same thing happened to MTN in Ghana. I mean, they sat down and were just watching whilst MTN innovatively was taking the market share until they got to over 75% of the entire Ghanaian market. And now government of Ghana is just, backing at MTN, trying to make it competitive. So I think it cuts across, right? It cuts across. Today, if we are talking about Ghana's GDP, the amount of business that MTN does also is part of our GDP. Of course, the money is repatriated to South Africa, but yet still, it's part of our GDP. So yes, it contributes to the geopolitics. If say, Facebook or Meta were to relocate and headquarter in Ghana here, of course, that will boost our GDP, right? Get their headquarters in Ghana here. That will boost our GDP through the roof. And then it will also make us a powerhouse in Africa in terms of bargaining power, even with the rest of the...
I'll ask all the panelists to share their closing thoughts and comments. Please, if you may, I'm asking if you can do it under a minute, but maximum a minute so that I don't cut you to my favor. And let's just spend a minute on it. So I'll keep Raymond as the last to also do some for closing remarks before I do my final remarks. I'll start with Theresa, then we'll have Zainab, and then we'll have Joshua, then Raymond as the last one. Please give your closing comment based on what we've discussed so far. Platform regulation, necessary or not? Based on your answer, please justify and give your recommendation or any other thoughts about it. Theresa.
I think it is very important to realize that just as people get to vote in a leader, just as people have their different rights and there are different standards as well as policies and laws that are enacted and put in place to protect both the multi-stakeholders and the consumers. It is very, very important that these platforms are regulated to that extent as well. If it can be done in country, let it be done as a continent. We have seen it being done in other continents. Why can't it be done in Africa? I end there.
All right, thank you, Theresa. Joshua.
Okay. Thank you. So yes, my final thoughts are: let's meet halfway, please. Raymond, let's meet halfway. I understand that regulation stifles growth, but I also understand that unbridled innovation causes chaos and anarchy, which too much regulation also causes, unfortunately. So we both need to meet somewhere in the middle and then have a very good compromise and together find solutions to how we're going to make this effective, productive. And I think that's what meaningful accessibility and the meaningful engagement is all about. Thank you.
Okay, Raymond, your take.
Thank you. And to assure Joshua, I'm not moving to the middle. Okay, so this is what I have written shortly. Be personally responsible for what you put out there. We are the problem. That is the reason for platforms to be regulated. We are the problem. Be a responsible platform user. Know that the world does not rotate around you. Others also have their rights. Thank you.
Okay, that was quite an interesting one. So I'm not taking sides, but let me share my thoughts. But before I share my thoughts, let me just read a phrase from a small article. This, I think, happened in 2018 and all through 2019. Anom, A-N-O-M, a secure messaging app built by the FBI and other law enforcement agencies, launched in October and solidified it. This was used to track down criminals. These include gangs, arms dealers, and so on and so forth. Criminals love privacy and security, right? The FBI thought of finding a way because most of these platforms were secure. And they shared it across, and a number of gangs, I think over 200 were raided through the platform. If platforms are being used for communication in terms of Facebook and the like, of course, criminals will thrive on because of encryption. If law enforcement has to find criminals, let them create an alternative for tracking criminal purposes. And that can still be achieved. We've seen an example. My second thought, platforms are brought about because of innovation. I would like to take the Chinese approach. Invest in any innovation that comes up, then when it grows and it's thriving, introduce policy and regulation to avoid monopoly, but also to bring a certain level of market balance. And I think that's how we should go. Then thirdly, Africa, if we're going to talk about platform regulation, we need to build our own internet infrastructure. Then we'll have a voice that can literally be heard when you talk about regulation, give or take, either for protecting our own people or not. Because 3/4 of the resources and tech platforms we're using are actually not built by us. An example, Microsoft Asia is Microsoft, the US. You talk about Huawei Technologies, the Chinese. Meta, the US. Twitter, the US. LinkedIn, anything else you talk about social related is not built by Africa. So when you talk about African regulation, it doesn't really stand because we don't have the infrastructure that balances. So even our data protection laws have loopholes because our internet resource is not ours. So that's my take. So am I for or against platform regulation? I'm not like Raymond really, but I would like to be in the middle. So I end there. But all in all, thank you so much for joining in. For those that just joined in and would like to find a way of engaging, there are mainly 3 ways I can communicate. You have the A Gig for Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter pages. You can follow them. The Ghana ICT, you can follow them. There are a lot of other internet governance forums, Internet Society, ICANN, beat the Internet Society Zambia chapter. You can follow the different platforms, and then you get most of the information that you need to continue engaging. But all in all, thank you so much for joining in. We've taken a bit of time than we had planned or got, so I don't know if there's anything else from your end before we call it good evening.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. I think that has been a great one. Like what Mr. Raymond said, we owe it to ourselves. Let's be a responsible platform users. Yeah, so as we move forward, let's continue this important conversation and work together to ensure that online platforms are safe, inclusive, and transparent for all. Thank you once again for your time and participation. Have a great day, great evening ahead, and we look forward to seeing you in our future events. Thank you so much. On behalf of our partners as well, I would like to say thank you to everybody for making up time. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Godsway. Good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you in the next one.
Good night.